Welcome to Thinking Green. We are back after our 3-month summer vacation and glad to be here, but I must admit a little bit rusty. Before we start, I wanted to mention there's an event going on right now at All Souls UU congregation at Unity Hall. It's running from 6 to 8 p.m. and it's in response to the Las Vegas massacre. Groups are gathering for shared mourning and unity. I think there's going to be a postcard campaign they're working on, and perhaps collecting donations to help. So this will be up on the internet if you feel like you have to go to Unity Hall. Got my permission. This year is a municipal election year, so most of the shows between now and Election Day will be related to either candidates for office or referendum questions that will be on the ballot. So tonight's guests are Team Green for New London Board of Education, Mirna Martinez, who's an incumbent, and Erick, who is our new young, energetic candidate. And we're going to talk to both of them about why they're running and what their views are on the future of education in New London. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess, and either one of you can start, why are you running for Board of Ed?
Okay, sure. So why am I running for Board of Education, and specifically here in New London? First of all, I love our town. I've been living in New London for 10 years. I went to school in Puerto Rico, but I will go back and forth working with nonprofits in our community as a teacher assistant, completely volunteer in New London High School. And I will immerse myself in the summers while I was free of University of Sacred Heart in Puerto Rico here in New London.
Can I just correct you, because you said you went to school in Puerto Rico, but you actually went to high school here.
Yeah, college. I mean college in Puerto Rico. I went to New London High School 2010 and upline. Go Wheelers! And you know, back in the days, New London High School had this like what the Wheelers stand for, and the W stand for whole community, H for honoring diversity, A for academic achievement, L for lifelong learning, E for educational excellence, and S, R for respect, and S for success. So I believe in that, and those values that New London High School put on me, and that's why I'm running for Board of Education, to improve our educational system, to bring community to our schools, engage our parents into our school, into their children's school, collaborating together with all stakeholders in our educational system to make it better, improve it, and make it successful for everyone in our town, and the people that are actually coming out of other towns to our magnet school system too.
And you're not that far away from, in years from having been a student.
Correct. 7 years.
Yeah.
7 years since I graduated in High School, and even when coming back here after college, I started working at Fresh New London, and I work with a lot of our students from different public schools, middle school, elementary school, high school, and I always hear their perspective and their challenges in school. And it always makes me have to like, what can I do to make this better? Like programs like Fresh, hearing youth voices, which empower our youth, bring leadership skills into their life. And that I went through that kind of pipeline within our town. So I believe that could happen actually in our schools too. Like, how can we have a leadership pipeline, teach our youth about respect and values within our school system? So that's why I'm running for Board of Education, Rana.
And now you've been on Board of Education, Mirna, for 2 terms, and unlike most of the current members of the Board of Education, you are like going back for more. What keeps you going?
At first, I feel the need to apologize. I feel because of the braces, I feel a little extra. I don't know, a little bit off right here as I speak. So my apologies. But I think I do want to start though, like why? Because there is something to be said for returning and what keeps you returning, but also why one started in this work. And I am a teacher by training, and I've taught in multiple districts, including our own. And why I initially got started onto the Board of Education or involved with the board work is because I saw as a teacher sometimes I would question the system and why we had to do certain things certain ways that didn't seem to be in the best interest of what we know how learning takes place. And when I was told that it was policy and the Board of Education, it planted that little seed about, well, then that's something to go take care of sometime, you know.
Because some things, you're empowered to do in your classrooms, and then some things, the policies just restrict you at times.
Right. So that was a while ago, and so now, like you said, almost 4 years into serving at the board. Why continue that is because, you know, like anything, there's a learning curve, and I think I've been able to move some things within the system, such as, you know, it's interesting, a lot of it, I think when we talk about what the goals are, and I do have specific goals such as equity within the system and having equity as a system in comparison to other non-urban districts, but there's also something to be said for the long-term kind of environmental change that when you are a member of a group of bringing certain topics up, like the equity issues, bringing them up again and again with different bits of information and helping to create this value as part of the team's value. And so in that sense, the work has begun, and but there's a lot to follow through with and continue, and actually making pieces come to fruition. So, and right now we are at an interesting point. Out of our 7 board members, only 2, 5 are choosing not to seek re-election. So with only 2 incumbents running again, we don't have a superintendent. We have an interim superintendent right now, so without having a permanent superintendent, and with the uncertainty with the state, with the budget, which creates uncertainty in our budget here in New London, there's a lot of change going on, and I feel that it's really important to have some experience and stability in the district, and you know, we're still in the transition to an all-magnet district, so there are a lot of moving pieces, and we do need to be able to keep an eye on the pieces that are important, and the institutional knowledge as well.
And one of the issues in New London is the way our election of board members is organized, that every 2 years there is the potential for 100% turnover of the Board of Education, which is not very typical. Most boards in most towns, you might replace, you know, if it has 9 members, 5 in one election year, and then 2 years later the other 4, so you don't have complete turnover, and each board member generally has a longer term than 2 years. So our system in New London is particularly vulnerable to the kind of disruption that we could be facing here.
Right, definitely. And our terms are short. You know, there are districts with up to 6 years, 6-year long terms, and so 2-year terms and the entire board up for re-election every 2 years is a lot. I think that having a staggered term for the board, so yes, 3 and 4 would probably be better for not only creating stability, but also being able to find new candidates would also be beneficial.
Well, I think the last Charter Revision Commission did consider that and maybe even suggested it, but it never came to fruition. So we're kind of stuck with what we have for now, but it does put us in a more precarious situation right now where we are than we could have been. So you've talked a little bit about, now both of you, why you're running, but can each of you talk about specific educational issues that you're particularly passionate about?
Sure. Curriculum, for at least for me, curriculum, restorative justice, diversity in our schools, and engagement, and both within the staff and our students, like being represented in all aspects of it. With curriculum, I believe like we have been lacking a curriculum that's more interactive, more engaging, and more futuristic, like more now than anything else. We when you will go out there and ask the kids what they have learned, they will all tell you like they have learned the same thing in a classroom, right? That's what they're learning. So we're basically having an educational system which the curriculum is based mostly on a cookie cutting system. When we know like all of the people in our town, such as diverse, rich in history, in diversity, come from different backgrounds. Everybody comes from a different background, and we are still teaching everyone the same way. So I'm looking to find out ways with the community. I want to engage the community in this, and look into ways like how can our kids, our youth, learn better, but in a different way. What is out there that we're not teaching in our schools, and how can we integrate it towards our curriculum, and engage the community deeply into our school system.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when I was on the board, 8 years ago, one of the things that I remarked on was that, our city is not wealthy in terms of money, but if you look at the resources that are here in the community, they're pretty rich, really, linguistically, historically, arts, visual arts, music. There is really historic preservation. We have the environmental side. We've got coastline. We've got river coastline. We have Long Island Sound coastline, and so it seemed at the time to me that there were a lot of other resources that we could be bringing in that maybe wouldn't cost so much, but would be around, would be available for the students. And I think when you were teaching in New London, when the dual language school was at on Shaw Street at BP Learned, I think you had said that you really went into the community a lot from those during those years.
Yeah. Thinking, do I answer that, or let me go back to what priorities would be? And I do as well agree that in curriculum, it's definitely important, and we've just actually recently started up the curriculum committee again in New London, and for it to be engaging, definitely. I mean, that's what we want our students to be able to get into it and buy into. Just like if you were changing anything systematically, what you want are the stakeholders to have buy-in, and in order for that to happen, part of what we need is, in general, we need it to be relevant to them. We need the curriculum our students to be able to see themselves and in all demographics in what we're teaching, how it is that they have contributed, their ancestors have contributed to where we are today, and for it to be real, because they know the difference between something that just seems textbook fed to them versus something that tells the grit and the whole story of what history is, and therefore how they could now relate to the world. And that reminds me of I am a member of an equity team in New London of individuals from the district, and there are 4 teams, 4 districts in the state that are participating in this equity team. And something recently, actually, it was, say Tuesday, yeah, so it was yesterday that was shared. Oh no, this was Friday, but it's still in that equity team in the training that it was called Beyond Diversity, was shared with us, is that we oftentimes think of poverty being the main factor of what holds students back, and it is a major factor. But to consider. I know this might not be the best.
I
to
think
share
I
here.
think we can zoom in on that.
You think so? Okay. Well,
We can try.
if we can. So if you look at this chart, up here we have scores, and going across down here we have income level. The first grouping of bars are below 20,000, family income of below 20,000. The next one, 20 to 40,000, 40 to 60,000, and 60 to 80,000. The shorter bar, the grayed in bar, is the black student population. The next one with the diagonal going this way bars are Latino. The straight bars, the tallest little bar is a white student population. Diagonal going this way, Asian, and that light blue gray is all together. And what it shows here is that, yes, with income, that there is greater achievement, but within each of those income brackets, that the children of color are always performing at the lowest end, whether from the lowest income bracket to the highest income bracket. So even in the highest income bracket, the children of color are performing lower.
Actually,
on
there seems like even more of a gap in some ways among the higher income, which is disturbing.
Yeah. But even at the higher income bracket, the children of color are performing at a lower rate than the white children in this one. So what this says to us is that when I'm just going back to the topic of equity, that we need to take into consideration when we're talking about, especially in a district like ours, because we have a large community that is of color, that we need to take into consideration when we break down our data and when we're not serving certain groups. So what is it, and back to curriculum, when students are able to see themselves in their teachers, in what's being taught to them as a reality of part of the larger painting of what society is, that it's easier for them to engage and say, I will buy into what is being shared with me, what is being taught to me. Actually, it just reminded me a little deja vu here for a moment. I didn't have this exact information a number of years ago, but I remember I probably in this show or in somebody else's show talking about the book I Won't Learn From You, and so it just comes back to that is whether I choose in a sense to learn from you or not, because the information is relevant. So anyway, the equity issue is a large one for me, and obviously I want all of our population to be succeeding and learning and reaching their highest potential. And I think a way to do that is to address all of our students and being able to disaggregate that data to know what it is that we're looking to, what the gaps that we're needing to fill.
Mirna, I don't know if you have to agree with me on this, but like even like we have proof, like when we teach that way in nonprofits, for example, you have the experience of teaching in nonprofits. When we teach in a way that's relevant to our youth culture, like they connect more to it, and they actually retain more
Sure.
learning too. So based on my experience, like I can say, like if you actually teach in a way that's more relevant to our students, to their culture, to their identity as a whole, like it will work.
Right.
Well, that's true of all of us, but people who look like me, I mean, it might automatically be more relevant without people even giving it a second thought.
You don't have to look too far. Right?
Yes, I don't have, but if you look at the history books, I came from Philadelphia, and I was really, and it's an old city, but I was still really excited when I moved to New England, and thought New London, this is the city that Benedict Arnold, burned down, and it was like history come to life. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of history in New London itself that is not, Benedict Arnold and the English and the Anglos here. Mm-hmm. It's actually been a pretty diverse area for centuries.
Yeah.
But that part of the history is not really emphasized,
Right.
I don't think.
Right.
And people, I don't know, there's just not been much thought given to it, but we need to give some thought to it.
Right.
Me too.
Well, I want to tell people who are viewing, if you would like to call in, we are going to be accepting phone calls. But what I wanted, being on the Board of Ed, is really important to have your own values and your own passions and your own issues, but you're inevitably going to be confronted by things that are going on in the city that you have to respond to. So one of those things in New London, which you've touched upon, is the magnet school district. The transition started several years ago and is still in process. What do you see as the benefits of the system, the potential challenges of the system, and how can it be sustained in a way that really helps our students? And I know those are 3 separate questions, but answer them however you want.
Well, I mean, the reason we went into it is the reason the state was offered it to us is to reduce racial isolation. And I'd say the reason that we bought into it, and I say we, but I was not on the board level at that time. But sure, that's a benefit. But also for financial reasons, there are financial incentives, and as we all know, that we don't have the tax base right now in New London to sustain the most robust school system, and so that's why we took it, and so that's the massive benefit. Another benefit is an enrichment of curriculum, like we've talked about, in creating these pathways. I totally agree with people that say, like, well, how is my child supposed to know whether they're going to be a scientist or an artist or in a leadership role or whatever it may be when they're in kindergarten, and I agree, but sometimes what happens is that with that focus of, let's say, the science, that there is an enriching of and a connecting of all of our subject areas, which is a part of, it's similar to what we were talking about a little bit ago, is needing to see the relevance of our subject matter. And when you start connecting it, it starts to make more sense, because our lives don't lead a subject matter separate type of a way, and so when it's together, it makes more sense. So those are some of the benefits. The challenges are that, well, initially the commitment was that for each of the sending districts, that the per pupil tuition that would be given from the sending districts would be $3,000 per pupil. When we reach 25% out of district and white in a school, and so before that, actually, so $3,000 per pupil, and then the state for each of those students was going to give us $7,085. When we reach 25% white and out of district, we would, in addition from the state, get $3,000 per New London student. This past year, or fiscal year 17, we didn't know until late in the spring that we were actually not going to be getting $7,085 per pupil from the state. They were actually lowering that to, I don't know the exact number, 6,800 and something, but that is a big pitfall, not being able to count on that money by, let's say, if it was March or April when we were notified. Most of the school year has it just hasn't been budgeted, it's been gone, it's been passed, and that's so that's a true concern, and I know that a lot of community members have voiced that concern, and it's something that as board members, as other community leaders, we need to be on them in Hartford to fulfill those commitments, to continue with the commitments that were made to us, because we have not even fully converted into an all-magnet district, and if already they're going back, it's not fair to our community.
Yeah, it's a really difficult situation and kind of infuriating. Part of our financial problems are, rooted in the fact that half of our property is off the tax rolls, and the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes that we're supposed to get back from the state for those properties that are off the tax rolls and serving a community far beyond our city's borders, also never gets funded to the full amount that it's supposed to be.
Right.
So it seems as though it's very easy for the state to make a promise, but actually not necessarily give us the funds that they promised.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you to clarify. I know you've become kind of a numbers person since you've been on the board. I've heard people complain that the amount we get for the out-of-district students is less than what our average student expenditure is in New London. And how do we answer that?
It's complicated because it depends on what you look at when you say an our New London expenditure is, because I don't even think that there is a standard of what we consider to be that per pupil, because there are, let's say, special education monies that are brought into the fold of the total, and therefore from there looks like it's a part. It makes special ed students, you could have a special ed student that costs the district $100,000. That
Right.
obviously is
And that
not
throws off the whole average.
exactly. And so therefore, if we're looking at that and we have a higher percentage of special ed students in our district, it doesn't really mean that our student per pupil is the average that now exists because of those special ed numbers. We also have a large percentage of English language learners that also end up raising that amount. And then the fact that there is that out-of-district tuition from the sending district and the state, and that's for, in a sense, those students. But then when we reach that limit, that 25% threshold, that we will also be getting for our New London students. So that's not the case. We've actually really greatly benefited. If you look at our schools like Winthrop and Nathan Hale that are fully magnetized, that have their numbers, they have a lot more as far as resources. They have a lot more. They have different engaging, whether in the arts program, they have more music, and they have more arts, and they have more programs that they're able to bring into the fold of the general education in order to engage the students, and it's working. And the same at Nathan Hale. And so that's not really the case, that we're not getting the right reimbursement also. But I have brought up at the Finance Committee a need to look at our tuition rates again for the sending districts, and that's something that we'll be doing soon.
And I do want to clarify for people who are watching who might not realize that the local education district is responsible for special ed costs. So
Right.
if Groton is sending a child with special needs, that amount of money that goes towards meeting that child's IEP, their individualized education plan,
Right.
is not New London's obligation. It is the sending district's obligation.
Right.
So we're a little bit protected, I imagine, with the out-of-district students from that volatility in the budget
Right.
of that special ed can bring into it.
I do want to say, though, that once again, that we do need the state to follow through with their commitment in order for that to actually be a benefit. Otherwise, it's not. And then it would be more of a cost, of a burden on the district.
Okay, so we touched on budget. So how do we get the best return on investment in our school budgeting?
I have been calling people, and that's what people ask. Like, what are you gonna do for we're depending on taxes, like you said previously, for our education. Like 50% of our house taxes are going towards our education. Like, what are you gonna do so it doesn't like keep going up? Like, people are moving out. Someone told me on the phone, and I told them, like, well, I believe in accountability. And I assure you, like, we let's see on the details, like what's going on within your schools, and what are we spending on, and where can we save money, but also like make the best with our resources. What we already have invested in our schools, like let's do the best with them, what we already have. So for me, I will look on. I will take care of looking up specifically on details, like what's going on within our school system. Who are we contracting, and what are they doing specifically, and having some kind of accountability towards that. Like, you were responsible of teaching this many kids, and they, the performance wasn't as expected. So what can you do about it as a principal of this school, and taking care of that? I think like that's really important. Like, before even like talking about like, let's put more money into our schools. Like, how can we make the best of the money that we already have in our schools?
And I think that in terms of budgeting in general, we should look at what investments will pay off rather than the strict dollar amounts, because you can waste a number that looks a little smaller, or you can really spend wisely something that's really more worthwhile and will pay off in the long run.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point, that with education, that a lot of what we're putting in is investment, and you don't see the returns immediately. And yes, we do need to be wise, and I do think that there's always room for improvement. And I've got some thoughts for the next budget go around. But at the same time, we do need to think of the long-term benefits. With programs, sometimes you're not going to see an increase in the numbers until, dual language, for instance. The scores for children in dual language and in monolingual education could look the same or even lower until about year 6 or 7, when you actually start seeing the kids in dual language start outperforming those in monolingual classes. So sometimes it's long term, and we have to understand that and be budgeting for those long term investment returns.
Now, one thing that's on a lot of people's mind in New London right now is, you mentioned we currently have an interim superintendent, so there is a search on for a permanent superintendent, and I wanted you to talk a little bit, I guess Mirna, more about what the process is looking like, and maybe both of you talk about what traits you would like to see in the next superintendent.
So we just started this past Saturday, 9 to 11. We had a meeting of the search committee, looking at the general, the job description and making decisions about. We decided not to have a search committee, and so the process is just beginning right now. What are the traits that we're looking for?
You said you decided not to have a search committee. You mean a search agency?
Yeah. So yeah. An agency. Yeah.
Well, the search agency did not do a very good job.
That's right.
Historically, so I think once burned.
That's right, and we definitely wouldn't use the same one.
We don't want to repeat embarrassments.
Yeah. No. And there is also a monetary aspect to this. We're in a very tight situation right now with not having a state budget. We've frozen right now hiring, so empty open positions are not to be filled right now, and there's concern about how long that'll go on for and what cuts we'll have to make from here. So I think that's a really important piece to it as well, is just knowing the reality that we don't have the funds for a firm. But as far as the qualities, I mean, thinking a little bit on the aspects that we've been talking about, obviously we'd like someone who embraces, I mean, for myself, I should say, when I say we, I'm just thinking that, us two.
I will agree. What were you going to say?
Yeah. And if you disagree, let us know.
Yes, that we would want someone that embraces the idea that we want equity, obviously, throughout the system, that we would want someone who embraces I didn't speak too much, but I definitely agree with wanting not an archaic way of learning, but one that addresses what's relevant to today's job and students' needs after they graduate college. And so looking for something more progressive, which to me would mean not having your standard form of education, but having something which is more active, participatory, and engaging. And so having more project-based, where students are coming in to work on a bigger project, a bigger goal, and they're all putting in from multiple disciplines, and teachers are more facilitators for getting that work done. And so I'd love to see a superintendent that can embrace a real movement in education, not the standard of what has been going on across the country, especially with students that haven't bought in, that haven't engaged, but even those who have agreed to participate in the way that it works right now, it doesn't mean that they could even move up a step and step up their games if they knew that it was that much more that was really carrying their own interests and needs. So that's a big one. Obviously, we want stability. We want someone who can advocate for the district and get us the funding that we need, that could have community buy-in and have great communication with community, that would build parental engagement and support. Those are a few of mine.
I have to agree to all you say, actually. You said, you might not agree. No, I do. Mostly someone that's, for me, I believe in someone that will immerse himself within our community and connect not only our education, and our students with education, but also to our community. That's looking to make the best out of what we have already in our community, like museums, art galleries, and integrating that into our curriculum and into our education, which are resources that will not cost more if you really think about it. We won't really have to do a lot to bring our kids to Liminal in our museum, to take a trip down there and learn about art and have an emerging activity and experience, which is now nowadays everything is moving to experiences. We see a lot of our kids in our phones, but we're still in part of our classes, and some of our curriculum doesn't integrate phones or even computers at all. So thinking of someone that will to be thinking out of the box, and when I say thinking out of the box, it's thinking out of the box, but not out of New London.
Yeah. Well, both of you are bilingual, and so how important do you think it is to foster bilingualism within our community? I've lived other places in the world, and almost everywhere in the world, the majority of people, and they're not necessarily geniuses, just as a matter of everyday life, are bilingual or multilingual. So is there anything we could be doing in New London that we're not doing now to promote bilingualism?
Well, even though there's a lot of bilingual, there's a big bilingual community out there. I don't think I see a lot within our interactions on our day to day. But sometimes I say that, but sometimes I do have bilingual experiences every day, going to restaurants and having speaking Spanish to the person. But I see it mostly through our ESOL still like to do the same, like the bilinguals within our Spanish, Hispanic and Latino community, and not necessarily the African American or white community. So I would like to see like more of that in those students being engaged with that, and not only in Spanish but like other languages too. Because I think in a world that's now connected through globalization, like it's important to speak in as many languages as possible out there. It is an asset not only while you are in school and while you are in your community, but like it's an asset when you're a tourist, when you're looking for employment. And the more languages that you speak, the better for you out there. So I believe like in teaching our students as many languages as possible. As possible as our resources allow it to.
Yeah, it's a really exciting possibility. I would say, yes, we're both bilingual. I don't know if you have any other languages, but I actually feel quite limited in my language ability. I would love to. As you know, I've taken Greek at St. Sophia's, and I've loved the mental challenge of doing that. But unfortunately, I've started that in my 40s generally, and so, I see other countries. Like I was just talking to a community member who was telling me that I believe May Wright speaks, I think it was beyond 6 languages, and it's just the way that she was raised, and she and it engages another part of your mind, and a language is beyond being able to say pencil in different ways, because the reality is that in some places pencil for some cultural reason may have many words for it, and so it opens you up to understanding different cultures in different worlds. I am proud of our dual language classrooms here in New London, but I think that we can step those up as well, that we can make them more authentic dual language classrooms. And we're going towards that in having we're right now in international baccalaureate candidacy at Jennings Elementary School, and looking to expand our dual language classrooms there. IB requires second language learning to be part of what their curriculum is, and so not only will we be developing our dual language strand within the IB World Language School, but also hopefully being able to offer multiple languages there, not just Spanish, but other languages as well. So I do think that's a strong possibility for our school system.
I'm an alumni of the ESL department in New London High School. So I went through that process. I came from Puerto Rico.
And you didn't speak English at all when you came to the United
only
mainland.
The basic, the pronouns, some of the verbs, but like I didn't know how to speak like the way I do it now. I do speak a little bit of French too, but that was through college, because I was like, I know English, I know Spanish, like what can I learn next? So I actually believe like even knowing more than one language like inspire you to keep learning about other things and always ask questions, which is important. Like when we just like Mirna said, like when it wakes up curiosity to keep learning like words, and how can I learn it? I'm trying to learn some about myself, some Latin. Which is the root of Spanish and other languages out there. So I think like it's a really interesting process.
Well, when I met many multilingual people during the years I lived in Israel, I was told that after the third one, the rest are easy. But it was not that uncommon to find people there who spoke 3 or 4 languages, and some who spoke more. And they learned them very organically. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk a little bit just about the practicality of voting in New London. You are both Green Party candidates, and it says so on our signs. And I'm sure when you knock on doors, there are still people who say, well, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Mm-hmm. And so maybe you could speak a little bit to how people should look at the ballot and look beyond Democrat and Republican.
People should learn who the candidates are and what are they looking to work towards our town and improving our education, not only for Board of Education, but like also like on people that are running for city council. Like learn your candidates, learn what are their views. If you have any questions, ask them. Don't be uncomfortable learning what do they believe in, if they have the same values as you. Not just vote because you are of a certain party. You're voting for everybody, not knowing who Ramon, Juanita, whoever it is, like just learn. And this is something I also tell to my former Puerto Ricans in the island when they go to elections. Like I'm like, my friends, don't vote por el partido. Like don't vote for the party, but for the candidates. Like what are their platforms? But actually, when we go door knocking in there, and they told us that, oh, we can't, but we vote just on one line. And I asked, like, oh, so you know who's running for you? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. So it's kind of like, like we need to, I believe like in this newer generation, we will see some difference. I mean, it will take some time until we see it, but I believe like the newer generation is actually being more voter conscious towards that.
I hope so. And in future shows, it's not available yet. We will have sample ballots so that people can see where the names are, and because the Connecticut ballot can be quite confusing. I think we only have about 5 more minutes, and I did want to let people know that there are quite a few debates and forums, so you will have the opportunity to listen to the candidates answer questions, and also just to mix with all the candidates informally. So the first forum that I have on my list right now is Friday, October 13th. The Neighborhood Alliance is hosting a debate and forum for city council candidates at the Senior Center. It says from 5 to 8:30 p.m. I'm guessing 1 hour in the beginning might be just meet and greet, because I can't imagine putting candidates on the spot for 3.5 hours. But that's Friday the 13th. Wednesday, October 18th, also for city council candidates, New London Landmarks is having a forum at the public library. Friday, October 20th is the first Neighborhood Alliance Board of Ed candidate debate and forum, and that's at the Senior Center. Once again, 5 p.m. to 8:30, they're saying. On Monday, October 23rd, the League of Women Voters is hosting a city council debate at the Science and Technology Magnet High School. On Tuesday, the 24th, Hearing Youth Voices will be holding a forum for Board of Ed candidates, but I don't have the time and place details. Hopefully by next week we'll have that. And Monday, October 30th, also at the Science and Technology Magnet High School, the second League of Women Voters debate for Board of Ed candidates, and that's at Science and Tech Magnet High School, 5 to 7:30. So there are plenty of opportunities. We're going to post these dates on our Facebook pages and our websites so that you can get to meet the candidates. Because I have to say, there are many of the candidates that I don't know. And I thought I knew everyone, but it's nothing close. So in our last few minutes, we have a couple of events coming up at our office. And maybe you can talk about what people can do at our office later this week.
I was trying to recall our calendar. Usually I'm visual, but on Thursday we're doing phone banking from 6:30 to 8:30 at our office, and that's 243 State Street.
And it's a really great office. It's a nice space to hang out.
It is a good office, yeah. You'll notice it from the outside. We have our palm cards enlarged in the windows, and you'll see their sign. And is it Saturday? Showing of milk?
Oh, I don't remember if we're doing it Friday or Saturday. Uh-oh. Here we
Like I said, I was not prepared with the calendar. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I wrote it down, and I don't know. I think milk actually, I don't remember if
it is in our Facebook page. If you have Facebook,
it is.
That's right.
I hope I got it right.
Yeah, so you can look up
Yeah,
the Team Green Facebook page, or re-elect Mirna Martinez for Board of Ed Facebook page.
Or New Lon- or-
Carrion for Board of Education.
or New London Green Party. We have multiple Facebook pages, and we try to cross-post all the events. And, it is such a great office that we have. We are planning to have frequent events, both things like phone banking that are directly campaign-related, and also films and hopefully karaoke and musical concerts will be there during the food stroll next week. So
if you see the office open, come in, meet
Yes,
us,
please
talk
do.
to us.
well, I think we're out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Eric.
you.
Thank you, Mirna. If you want to come on again, like right before Election Day, that would be great. And we'll see you all next week. Next week, we've invited some candidates, Green Party candidates from Waterford, and we're not quite sure who will show up, but they are running a full slate of Greens. Many of them are young Greens with a lot of energy and new ideas, so that'll be exciting. So thanks to the two of you,
Thank
and
you.
we'll see you all next
Thank you,
week.
Ron.
Thanks for having us.